Follow me your conscience. I want to bury it inside here.
Yes. Motivo Dicta a parlé. Sankara a parlé. Goïta est en train de parler.
All the people that you see here are students. But the most important thing is that they don't know what to expect in the future. But the French kids who are going to school just like you, they know already when they finish the school, they have a job, they have a house, they have a...
Abba!
America!
Abba!
France!
Abba!
England!
Abba!
Arab!
Abba!
Everyone!
Abba!
Africa, we stand together!
Mass young fool! Commando! Mass young fool! Commando!
Peace and love, freedom and decolonization to all African people, those at home, those abroad, and those in the future. If you have two shoes, please sell one and buy a sword. If you have two trousers, please sell one and buy a sword. Because now it is time for revolution. And this revolution is no longer on streets. This revolution is not about burning cows. This revolution is about building our own cars, selling them to make money. Essentially, this revolution is in the mind. Because if we are not in charge of our mind, we cannot be in charge of our thoughts and of our actions. And the one who controls our mind will be able to control our reality, be able to control our lives and make us the tools of our own oppression and the tools of self-destruction. Once again, please receive our revolutionary greetings. My name is King Kabbalah from the African Continental Unity Party. I'm delighted to be with you again today on this rendezvous where we have to talk about things that are important to us as African people, things that are relevant to our liberation and emancipation as African people. Yes, last week we talked about the essence of African revolution, most importantly, the new African revolution. We argued that this time around, the revolution in Africa should be based on power, not on money, not on rule of law, not on human rights or whatsoever. We knew human rights in Africa before European men came to Africa. But actually, what we are struggling with in the continent today is the powerlessness, is our lack of power. And therefore, the new revolution in Africa must be based on power, on building the African power base. So today, it appears to me a necessity to try and delve into the concept of power, to try and discuss the concept of power so that we understand what we mean when we talk about power. So today we are going to discuss about power. I'm going to provide a context, a general context of power, why power is important for us as African people at this time period. Followed will be a definition, a context-based definition of power for us as African people. What does it mean, power? And lastly, we'll talk about how we can go about building power. And I will probably give one recommendation when concerned as African people in relation to power. So, as argued last time in our previous video, power is the essence of life for not just us African people, but for everybody in this world. Whether at the individual level or at the collective level, power is the essence of life, because without the power, there's nothing that we can do. Actually, for you to be able to receive this presentation, you have to have certain amount of power, either in your device that you are using, phone, laptop, tablets, and you need to be able to listen to my presentation and to analyze what I'm talking about, because you are in capacity to do so simply because you have the power. right? So power is the essence of life. Without it, we are nothing. And when we try to understand the dynamic of today's world, we realize that the world is not governed by human rights. The world is not governed by democracy. The world is not governed by rule of law. The world is governed by power. And those who are powerful, those who have the power, have as well the ability to impose their choices, their willingness, their desire unto those who are powerless. And that is the reason why we have a setup of the world today that is divided into different blocks. We have block of countries that are called developed countries. Simply means they are powerful countries. And we have a block of countries that are regarded as underdeveloped countries simply because they are powerless countries. Therefore, they are being underdeveloped. So the chance, the future, the survival of powerless people of this world, including African people, is to develop the means through which they can acquire the power that will put them in the driving seat of their reality and their destiny. Now, in particular way, when it comes to us as African people, I want to give you some scenarios, one or two, so that you can understand how we are being affected by the fact that we are powerless. Or I should say, for the fact that we accept to be powerless. We need to realize how that state of powerlessness affects our lives individually as well as collectively in a negative way and in a bad way, so that it becomes a must for us to begin looking for power, for us to begin longing for power and organizing for power before the end of the 21st century as African people, because that's where lies our liberation, our emancipation, and most importantly, our survival beyond the 21st century. Now, the first thing that we need to understand is that the leadership that we have in Africa today, your president, my president, your minister, my minister, whatever it is, minister of agriculture, of economy, so forth and so on, all these folks are agents of Western imperialism. They are agents of Western imperialism. They are working most to take care of the interest of the Western countries, those countries that colonized Africa. That is why once they are elected, once they are in the position of power, the first thing or the first policy which they put in place will create protest, riots, and frustration among the people, especially the young people. And the next morning we see people on streets protesting and demanding for things to be done for them. That is simply means that the people that we elect, the priority set up for them is to take care of the interest of the Western countries before they can look into the interest of us as African people who elected them. Now, for you to understand this, you need to understand the context in which the African leadership finds itself, which means that a person, even the most purest person that I know, the most honest person that I know in Africa, if they put him in charge of Africa, of one of the African countries today, the next morning, we all going to protest, because the context of leadership in Africa is set up to make sure that the leaders in Africa must take care firstly of the interest of the Western countries. And I used to tell people that even Jesus Christ, if you bring him in power today, even Prophet Muhammad, if you bring him in power today, the next morning people will throw stone at them, because what they will do with the current setup, with the current system, will be not that which African people expect from them, will be mostly that which the guardians, or I should say the gatekeepers of the system, expect from them. So the Western countries, right from the independence period in Africa, they set up a system of terror and fear, which makes every African person who comes into the position of leadership to realize that he has to comply with expectations of the Western countries or Western powers, the former colonizers of Africa. If he does not do that, he may find himself being assassinated. He may find himself being obviously overthrown. He may find himself facing a situation of rebels, of terrorist groups that are coming from nowhere to destabilize him. So therefore, for him to peacefully finish his mandates, he has to firstly take care of the interest of the Western powers and their multinational corporations. That is the reality of today. That is why we, as the masses of African people, we don't find ourselves in whatever that these folks are doing in the leadership position. We don't really find our interest in whatever strategies they're coming up with, whatever promises that they came up with, and what they do when they get into power. There are two things different. The reason simply because we, as the people, as the masses, we don't have the power that can compel our leaders to do what we want. So when they find themselves in the leadership position, they find themselves in a situation where they are compelled to do what the Western society expects from them, because that's where the power is. You see the point? That is the reason why I used to say that the better solution, the solution for us as African people, must come from the population, from the masses, in a way that we need to consolidate and to create a different pole of power, so that when people go into the leadership position, they find themselves in the middle of different poles of power, which is the power of the masses against the power of the Western countries. In a way that the same way that you are being terrified by the Western countries in terms of what they can do to you if you do not comply with their demands and their expectations, you must as well feel threatened, feel terrified by the power of the people, so that you have only two choices. One is you satisfy the masses, right? So that you can remain alive, you can remain in power, you can finish your mandates. Or you quit, you run away. Because what is happening today is that they're finding themselves being threatened only by the Western power, and they don't feel being threatened by us, the masses of African people, simply because we don't have the power. So power is very, very important for us as African people. And that was just in the context of us as the population. But overall, when we look at the situation of Africa, you will see that you see countries like Turkey, Japan, China, America, England, all these countries, every year you will hear them coming up with the projects that, such as, we have invested so and so in Africa. We have this kind of projects for Africa, which eventually will create a return on investment for them. But we have never heard a situation whereby an African country has a project such as, okay, we have invested in Turkey with amount of $50 billion US, which will bring us such return in 10 years or 5 years time. We don't have such stories. When you hear the medias, when you listen to the media, the story that you hear is that people have projects based on Africa, not us having projects based on other people. So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to explain is that the world, the reality today, because of the powerlessness of Africa, other people are projecting their future relationship with Africa, or in other words, they are projecting themselves into the future in relation to Africa by saying, for example, that we will be building certain technologies, industries, of infrastructures by exploiting Africa, by taking something that is coming out of Africa. And us, we don't have such aspirations, such as in 20 or in 10 years to come, we'll have to conquer Chinese market, we'll have to conquer American markets, we'll have to build such a technology, such a products that will have to conquer an international market. We don't have those kind of stories in Africa. Our stories are more of passive stories, expecting other people to invest in us, but we have no projects of investing in other people. This tells you already a dimension of power at play when it comes to the relationship that we have as African people with the rest of the world. And that is even reason why I used to tell Africans that, they're saying that goes that Africa is the future of the world. We must be careful and intelligent to understand that the future people talk about is the mineral resources, is the future that the resources of Africa will play in the future of the world, but not the future of African person, not the future of African men and African women. When people say that Africa is the future, they are referring to the mineral resources, to the material resources, to the wealth of Africa. They don't refer to the African men and African women, because for you to be part of the future, you have to play an important role in that future, which we are not playing right now. It's our resources. It is our resources that play the role, but we as African people, we are found wanting in terms of the role that every nation must play in the making of the future of the world. So we will not be surprised if we get decimated by some kind of diseases, some kind of, biological attacks, because we don't wait in the future of the world, right? We don't play. We have not yet developed our willingness, our commitment to play an important role in the future of the world, simply because we don't manifest our willingness to power. We don't wait in the balance of power in the world today. So power is important. Power will make us relevant as African people. Power will make us significant as African people. Only the power can give us a voice that will be audible, that will be listenable, and the voice that will matter, so that one day we walk on this earth as African people, whether on the continent or in the diaspora, with the confidence in our mind that our voice matters. As Vladimir Putin told the world that you did not listen to us before, but now you must listen, when they developed that their weapon that they called Saturn II or something like that. So power is the essence of life. So my brother, my sister, dear African, don't long for Facebook popularity. Don't long for money, because money is just a paper that can be printed and can be changed from paper to something else. Don't be longing for human rights. Don't be fighting for democracy. Don't be fighting for the rule of law. All these concepts, empty concepts that were developed in the West and fed onto us to distract us from the important element that will free us, which is the power. Power. That's the only thing that will liberate and emancipate Africa and African people. Now, let's now define power in this context of revolution. What power means to us as African people. I'm going to use the quote by one of the African revolutionaries, Kwame Ture, or Stokely Carmichael, as he was well known. He said that a strong people or a powerful people are those who are able to define their own terms, define their own words, and make those words accepted by other people. And whoever wants to conquer those people, who wants to conquer those people, must strip them of that power of defining their own terms, their own realities, before he can conquer them. In other words, a powerful people, a free people, are those who are able to define their own reality, to define their own terms, to define their own options, and make those options accepted by other people. And if you want to destroy that free people, what you have to take away from them is that ability to define for themselves, so that you can impose on them your own definition. That is why we are today the Congolese, we are today South Africans, we are today Nigerian, we are today Ghanaian, not because we defined ourselves, but because the enemy who stripped us with the power of self-definition and self-determination, is the one who called us, who defined us into what we are today. So that is the definition actually of power. In a nutshell, power means the ability to define options. That is what power means. If we are in the position of power today as African people, we will be able to define what is our currency as African people. We'll be able to define what is our political objective, what is our economic objective, right? Because the Western man has distracted us with a lot of theories, a lot of empty theories when it comes to economic development. For example, they've taken us from modernization, industrialization, neoliberalism. Today we are dealing with the globalization, sustainable development, all these things. When you study them, you understand that they are meant to distract us. So with the power, we'll be able to define for ourselves what should be our economic development, what should be the goals of our economic development, what should be the goals of our political development. And even at your individual level, with the power, you are able to decide today what kind of life you want to live, what kind of life you want your children to live, what kind of school you want them to go to, right? Where you want to spend your weekend. You can decide today to wake up in the morning in Accra, Ghana, and spend your evening in East Africa, Kenya, and the next morning have your breakfast in Johannesburg, South Africa. That is the power. And that is what we all individually have to aim for. But most importantly, that is what we collectively as African people have to struggle for, because individual power has its limitation. Now I'm talking about how to build the power, of course. Individual power has its limitation, right? And the most important limitation of individual power is that it gives you the ability to choose, not to define. As an individual, you can have as much money as you can, but it only gives you the power to choose what are the best options, right, available that you can take for yourself. You can choose which school you can send your kids to. You can choose to spend your weekend, in Zanzibar or wherever you wish to be, because you have money, you have the individual power to do so. But you individually cannot be able to define the options. You are rather choosing from the options that have been established, that have been defined by other people. And that is in other words, that is the essence of freedom. You are free within a kingdom, just like a dog or like a goat that is being tied to a rope, right? It can only move according to the length of the rope that holds it. If it believes that it's free, it can run wherever you want to run. It's going to run until it reaches the end of the rope and get kicked in violently. That is how we end up with our lives individually, because the mindset of individualism preached by the Western man has been integrated in our culture as African people, so that we have lost ourselves. We don't even recognize that we are zombies towards ourselves. We like individualism. We want individual power until we are like Kanye West and realize that, okay, I cannot do much with my individual power. Your bank account is closed, your money is blocked, and you realize that you are really nothing against the system that we are faced collectively as African people, right? Individual power can really only take you up to a level where you get satisfied individually, of course, with certain things that you want, being limited, of course, but the ability to define the options, to define what should be our society looking like, right? What should our society be like? What should our families look like? What should be our work environment look like? What should be the employment in Africa look like? What should be the price of our raw materials? All these things are the things that we can do only when we build the collective power, because with the collective power, we are able not to choose among the options that have been put in front of us, but to define the options that we want for ourselves. That is why, going back to Kwame Ture, Powerful people are those who define terms, define options for themselves, and make these options accepted by other people. Today, Chinese are doing it. Why? Because they are powerful people. Do you know how much money America, France, England spend in a propaganda to demonize the products made in China? And they're still doing that. But regardless, everywhere you go, in Europe, in Africa, you go in every single household, you won't pick up 5 items without seeing at the back of one a mention made in China. That is a power. They define their own options, and people must accept those options. Arabs are trying to do that. Indians are trying to do that. Why can't we do that as African people? What is difficult for us to do that today? I tell you what is difficult. Ego, individualism, mindset, selfishness, mindset, and the pathetic mindset of what I usually call messianic attitude of African people, who believe that as African people, we cannot change our reality. There must be a Messiah coming somewhere, a supernatural leader, a strong leader who can change Africa. And therefore, we distance ourselves from our responsibilities. But I'm here to tell you, dear Africans, that we are the ones who have to make this happen. Actually, the power that I've been talking about is our collective power as a masses of African people. I'm not even talking about military power. I'm not even talking about scientific power. I'm just talking about the number, the power that lies in the number of us as African people. That is why I started up talking about the confrontation that our leaders find themselves when they go into power. They are confronted the terror of Western imperialism, which is so powerful, and because they don't feel the same level of power, the same level of threat coming from the people, they are complying easily with the Western demands than with our demands as a citizen of the country. Therefore, we need the power as a society, as civil society, African civil society. We need the power. And I've explained what this power means. And I've explained the difference or the limitations of individual power and the potential power of collective power as African people. Because if we come together as a group of people, as a society, we build our power base, we are able to define the options that will govern our society, our group, our community. And that is what I call collective power, which allows us to define our own options and make other people accepting them and agreeing with them. And there's no other way, really. I don't know whoever you can consult or can read. There's no other way. There's only one formula through which we can build the collective power that I've been talking about as African masses. And this is the organization. Organization. Organize, organize, organize. You get everything done. With little organization, you get little things done. With organizing, sometimes you get things done sometimes. But if we are organized every time, we get things done every time. So organization is the formula, and it is my recommendation for the building of the power that we want in the 21st century to serve ourselves, to protect ourselves, to defend ourselves as African people. So, if you are an African person, if you are a Pan-Africanist and you are not in an organization that is fighting to bring people together and build a power base, you are fooling yourself. You cannot be a Pan-Africanist without working actively in an organization. And we see a lot of dreamers around there. It suffices for you to have your camera and microphone and then talk, and you are a Pan-Africanist, especially today. But that is not what it's supposed to be, how things are supposed to be. You have to be in an organization for you to call yourself a Pan-Africanist. So, my message is this. Please, let us organize as African people. So if you don't have an organization, find one. join one, contribute, give your support, understand what is the aim of that organization, and understand what is your objective in that organization, what you can do to support that organization achieving that aim or that objective which it has. And if you want me to suggest you to one, you can write, see here, ACUP, African Continental Unity Party. I do invite you to join us, to put our heads together, to put our skills together, to put our efforts together. As a result, we'll be able to create a strong movement that will have an impact on the continent, so that when we speak to our leaders, they listen. When we stand on an objective, we accomplish it because of the power of the number. So find an organization. Whether you are organized around economic objectives, you must be determined, you must be intentional in participating in that organization and making things happen economically. Whether you are organized around political objectives, you must be intentional, you must be determined, and you must be willingly participating in an active way so that your political objectives can be achieved. Whether you are organizing around some kind of social objectives, some kind of, whatever, environmental objectives, but be part of an organization. But as far as Africa is concerned at this time, we need more Pan-African organizations, and we want to bring these organizations together so that we can create the power context that we want to define our own options. So find in the description the ACUP, what is it about, the African Continental Unity Party, and you can support us with your money, with your logistical means that we want at this moment, with anything that really can move us from where we are to the certain level where we can become so significant in our actions, in our policies. So if you have liked this short presentation on power, I invite you to like the video, to share the video. If you have not subscribed to our channel, please do so, because this is in support of this worthy agenda. But most importantly, we need your support, we need your presence, we need your skills, and we need your money, because this revolution needs money for us to do. The United States of America, England, France, they spend billions to develop think tanks that are studying every means and possibilities to undermine African development, African liberation, African emancipation. So we cannot expect to liberate ourselves if we are not committed with our means, with our money, with our tools, with our skills. If we think that the agenda of African liberation is just once in a while thing where you like a video on Facebook and you think that you have contributed into the agenda of African liberation, you are lying to yourself. We need to be all somewhere, somehow committed and connected and contributing to this agenda. So you may not be in front of camera, but you can act from the background to support those who are acting so that the movement can grow and move forward. So if you have 2 shoes, please sell one and buy a sword. If you have 2 trousers, please sell one and buy a sword, because now it is time for revolution. And this revolution is no longer on the streets. This revolution is in the mind, because if we are not in charge of our mind, we are not then in charge of our actions, and the enemy will take charge of our actions and make us the tools of self-destructions. Peace and love, freedom and decolonization to all African people, those at home, those abroad, and those in the future. See you next time. Thank you very much.